I arrived in America about 2 weeks before Martin Luther King's March on Washington. And I was born in Georgetown, what was British Guyana, is now Guyana, Georgetown, Guyana. I grew up in very poor circumstances.
This is Tech Sergeant Chance Johnson with 140th Wing Public Affairs, and I recently had the privilege of speaking with Dr. Frank Douglas, author and award-winning industry veteran with 3 decades of experience in healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and entrepreneurship. As well, Dr. Douglas served in the United States Navy as a physician, researching for the Department of Health and Human Services.
I came here in '63, as I said, 2 weeks before Martin Luther King's March in Washington. His was a nonviolent effort. It was a Gandhi-type effort. And look at how much he achieved.
Dr. Douglas spoke with me about his experiences moving to the United States, the part he played in the civil rights movement, and the influence that Dr. Martin Luther King had on him.
But at that time, I was beginning to become involved in the struggle, as we would say. As I was leaving Lehigh University to go to Cornell, I then began to realize that I was in a privileged position, and therefore I needed to be doing something to help others. So when I got to Cornell, I became really very active. And my activity, I've always told people, I always preferred not to be active politically as such, but to do those things which will enable others who have been deprived. So I spent a lot of time in coaching and mentoring the young Black students who were at Cornell. So on the one hand, you have got, 2 movements which are moving towards violence. And you have, on the other hand, a movement which was nonviolent and speaking to the better angels within us. And I think in a real sense, and I tell people this because I watched it, Martin Luther King succeeded when white young people from the North went and joined, his efforts, and they too were being brutalized. The hoses were turned on them, the dogs were turned on them, and a number of them lost their lives. Okay, that spoke volumes and directly, particularly to white Northerners, as to the inequity of what was going on. But the situation was, and perhaps and I think that's probably correct, is that the country was then faced with, do you deal with a nonviolent effort that's appealing to our better angels, or do you want to deal with a radical, somewhat militarized, in the case of the Black Panther effort?
I asked Dr. Douglas what values and principles he lived by, allowing him to endure as a Black student during such a turbulent time in our nation's history.
Particularly with respect to how I dealt with racism, one of my values had everything to do with knowing myself, self-authenticity, really emotional strength is another one of my values, and persevering. And so when I met with obstacles, I dug down deep. And as I told people, to me, it was really about true grit. And so I just took my licks and kept moving ahead.
Dr. Douglas shared with me how he believes Dr. King's legacy has impacted the country since his death.
I think Dr. King left a significant legacy, as a matter of fact, from which people in my generation have benefited tremendously. Simple things like being able to go to predominantly white institutions. As you know, that's around the time when the first Blacks were being admitted. Some, with the aid of of police were being admitted to, or I wouldn't say admitted, being allowed to attend predominantly white universities. And as a result, we now have a large cadre of black men and women who are professionals. You know, they're lawyers, they are doctors, they are business people who are also leaders in various areas. So that is the significant legacy that, in my view, that Martin Luther King has left. Namely, he opened up the doors so that, you know, capable, brilliant black men and women could not only enter through those doors, but take their seats at the tables of leadership. And that is the legacy that he has left.
Drawing from his personal experiences, Dr. Douglas now works with individuals experiencing discrimination in the workplace and helps to reframe their issues so that they're better equipped to tackle their obstacles.
We focus on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and we focus on the environment. We focus on, improving awareness, making people aware of things like microaggressions, the language they use. We focus on things that we can measure, namely recruitment, the numbers when we recruit, etc. An individual is involved, one. Secondly, often things break down because there isn't a dialogue that is occurring between that individual and the manager in the middle, or their immediate manager, immediate supervisor. And three, there is an environment in which equity is not. As a matter of fact, I don't focus on the diversity, equity, inclusion. I focus on equity, inclusion, diversity. Because
in that order,
if overall there's equity in an environment, most of the people have no time to think about including others and about diversity if they don't feel that they themselves are being treated equitably. We invite individuals, we invite companies, companies who have a problem, to send individuals to us. And because what we are going to do with that individual, we have a format in which they describe their situation, what's their desired outcome, the environment they're in, etc. And they present to a panel that we have. We call it our VIP panel, victors over injustices in their professions. We call them our VIP panel. But these are individuals who have been through similar things, so they can be empathetic. But their role is to listen to that individual and try to find out, as they listen to that individual, how they could help that individual reframe their problem, in such a way that they can have a meaningful dialogue with their manager and lead to solutions that increases both their own productivity and the productivity of their organization. And so what we try to do is, when individuals come to us, is that we explore with them the problem they have and try to see if we can reframe that problem so that they can go back and have that dialogue and come out with something that is productive to both.
Finally, Dr. Douglas informed me how the work he does is also useful for military members in the workplace.
The military has its, as you know so well, has its own rules and regulations, and tends to do things differently from the way it's done in civilian life. But I think there is an opportunity, for the approach we've taken to really engage both with individual soldiers, military people who feel they have been discriminated against for one reason or another, to engage with that, and also to engage with their superiors, one level above, to enable that difficult dialogue so that there can be an understanding of what's going on, and to be able to separate that from what is military rigor from what is actually being driven by discrimination, which might not be recognized.